back and forth like that. So we will see how we do. All right, so I'm going to kick it off. I have, whoopsie, this here. All right. So my name is Angie Byron. I'm talking to you about bridging the gap from Drupal 7 to Drupal 9. Actually, before I get too far into this, can people see the slides? Let's double check that. Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you very much. That would be very awkward if I were presenting and you couldn't see anything. Cool. So my name is Angie Webchick Byron. I work at Acquia. I've been involved in the Drupal community since 2005 as a Google Summer of Code student because I had major imposter syndrome and I thought that you had to be a freaking genius to contribute to open source, and that was for students. And I was like, all right, let me try this. And then I proceeded to get extremely involved in all aspects of Drupal: core development, contrib development, webmaster stuff, security team stuff, and you name it. And these days I'm a Drupal core committer and a product manager for Drupal. So today I'm going to talk to you about migration. So why are we here? We are here because these are numbers taken from about last week. Today, most sites that are on Drupal are still on Drupal 7. We don't know for sure. These are based on the update status module numbers that Drupal.org has, but that's a big chunk of the pie still on Drupal 7. The next biggest chunk, obviously, Drupal 8, because Drupal 9 just came out basically a month ago, so people are still kind of working off that. And Drupal 7 is a great release. I worked on Drupal 7. Big fan of Drupal 7. However, if you're still on Drupal 7, you're missing out on all kinds of awesome stuff that has happened since 2011, which is quite a long time. We've added all kinds of new stuff for content authors, richer media management, layout builder, mobile-friendly stuff out of the box. All of this stuff kind of integrated and really, working well together. Then we have all this great stuff for site builders. Configuration management is a huge one. Drupal 8 and 9 assumes out of the box that you want configuration to be moved between environments, so everything is set up that way. The multilingual support in 8 and 9 is exquisite. We have improved accessibility. We have expanded support for structured content. All these things that make Drupal really flexible, those are in 8 and 9 as well. And then there's all this great stuff in Drupal 8 and 9 for developers as well. The whole API first initiative, which gave native support for JSON API for people who want to write decoupled front ends, updating to the latest of the backend code, modern web standards, PHP 7, all these kinds of things, an improved theme system, better caching, all manner of things to help developers do better in Drupal. And then as well as all the future innovation that's happening in 9.1 and contrib. So we have all of these great things that's going on, but if you're still on Drupal 7, you're not benefiting from these things, and it can cause a lot of people to kind of ask themselves, why am I still even on Drupal? Because the fact is, migrations from Drupal 7, they can be expensive. There are several steps in the process. So in your analysis and planning phase, that's when you're looking at all the modules that you have. You're trying to figure out what the best modules to replace them in Drupal 9 are, and that's not always a straightforward process. You also want to, take a look at your content model that you developed 10 years ago and see if you still like it that way. You might want to say consolidate content types down to, like I used to have seminar and events and, this other thing, and I want to make them all webinars or something like that. There's a DevOps piece. Drupal 9 has a much higher system requirements compared to Drupal 7 because it's much newer, and they want us to be, on supported software for a long time. There is the data import piece, which is actually getting the nuts and bolts of your content into your new Drupal 9 site. There's the business logic piece and presentation piece. So any kind of custom code you have on your site, that all needs to be moved to Drupal 9, which is oftentimes like a rewrite from the old way to the new way. And so all of these steps together start implementing the time and the cost, and then that kind of intimidates people and it makes them feel a little bad. I'm just going to switch to chat real quick. Can anyone empathize with these points that I'm making? Does this ring true to you? Yes, a lot of people saying yes. Okay, great. All right. Yeah, we at Acquia did a round of user research with our user research team and came up with all kinds of problems that people were having with Drupal 7 to Drupal 9. So I'm here to tell you a little bit about what the upgrade process looks like and what tools and tricks are available in the open source world, and then something we've been working at Acquia to kind of help mitigate some of the pain points as well. So what does the upgrade process look like overall? Well, first, I highly recommend this. It's time for some spring cleaning or summer cleaning or winter cleaning or whatever season it is in your area. So like look carefully at all of the modules you're using, all the custom code that you have, and really ask yourself, do you need it? Does it spark joy? If it doesn't, as much of that as you can get rid of before you even start, the better off you're going to be. Another really good tip is get on the latest version of all of your Drupal 7 projects. So if you're trying to migrate from this module to that module, but you're using an older version and the database is not quite up to par, the migration path is going to fail, and that's going to give you a lot of problems. There's also a really great known upgrade issues page. I can click it here, I think, on Drupal.org, which is really good to give a read through, because this will tell you stuff that you're going to hit, little gotchas here and there, like for example, views are not migrated. So any views that you have, you'll have to create manually. But hey, there's a patch over here and there's a module that might be able to help you with that. Those kind of tips and tricks are helpful there. And then the migration process itself is very different. If anybody was around back in the days of like Drupal 6 and Drupal 5 even, those were a much different process. You would basically create, you'd basically install Drupal, n+1 on top of your existing Drupal site and break everything. And then you'd run update.php and wait for minutes to hours to days for that to finish doing what it's doing. And then finally, at the end of it, you'd have kind of an upgrade in place of your old data to your new data. In Drupal 8 and 9, we don't do that anymore because that way is fraught with a bunch of peril, data integrity issues and other things. So instead, you make a new, fresh Drupal 9 site that you don't do anything with. You don't want to add content here. You don't want to make big configuration changes here, because what you want to do is make that sort of your workspace for where all your site's going to go. And then you migrate your Drupal 7 site to it. And the nice thing about that is it allows you to keep your Drupal 9 and your Drupal 7 site up and running in parallel, so that when it comes time to do the big cutover, you're not waiting for some massive upgrade process to happen. You can instead just flip the switch. So I'll pause there. Any questions on the overall process of how you upgrade from Drupal 7 and 9? Yeah, someone's pointing out that there are some modules that aren't available in Drupal 9, and then you have a whole bunch of fun trying to figure out what you're possibly going. Oh yeah, it's Angieception. Sorry, I don't know how to fix that. Yeah, a question is it worth pausing at Drupal 8? It's a fair question. The nice thing about Drupal's migration system is it's flexible. It'll let you do either one. So if you find, and we'll get into some tools to do this later, if you find that there are more of your modules available in Drupal 8 than there were in Drupal 9, you may want to go to 8 first as an interim, because the upgrade path from 8 to 9, unlike any other upgrade path since, like, I don't know, Drupal 4.1 or something, is super straightforward. It's basically, update to the latest version of your code, make sure you're not using any deprecated functions, ta-da, bang, you're done. So a lot of people do that. Some people figure if they're going to do a big upgrade, they want to do it once and they want to be on the latest version. Either way works. But a lot of people do move to 8, just as an interim step. And then content freezes, yeah. There are tools within the migration system to sync over your latest content as it's going. So you don't have to do a content freeze for the entire time that you're doing the migration. That's another big advantage of this approach. Even though it's a little bit more work because you're building your new site up from scratch, it allows you to do it in the way that makes the most sense. And it also allows you to to make it so that you can still keep using the site as it is in place and only really get into freezes when you get to that point where you're really ready, you're close to ready to launch. So yeah, those are really great questions. So I want to talk about some of the open source tools that are out there to help. So first off, Drupal 8 and 9 ship with a powerful and now stable Migrate API. So the Migrate API has been part of Drupal core since Drupal 8.0, like way back in 2015. But it initially shipped as an experimental module or a set of experimental modules. And it's been a lot of work by a lot of awesome people over the past 4.5 years to get that to stable, including multilingual migrations, which previously were not. So huge shout out to those folks. So that means that all of the core modules ship with migration stuff out of the box, both from Drupal 6 and 7 to Drupal 8 and 9. So that's a really, really powerful thing. There's also a very basic UI in there that attempts to replicate what update.php used to do. So that's also a helpful thing if that's, if you have like your personal blog or something like that and it's a one and done kind of go, it's really useful for that. How the Migrate API works as a concept is it's basically, you know, an entity transform type of thing. You start with a source, and the default source that ships with Drupal is Drupal 6 and 7. So I have a classic DrupalCon there. But in Contrib, there's all sorts of other sources. You can import from CSV, from a SQL table, from WordPress, JSON, XML, pretty much you name it. Just like everything else in Drupal, these are very pluggable. So you can actually pull the source from wherever you want. But Drupal core by default covers 6 and 7. And then you're migrating that to a destination, which is either Drupal 8 or 9, or, you know, again, pluggable. You can make it be something else that if you want it to be. And then in between there is a process plugins. Process plugins do transforming. See, Autobots, but transforming for good, not for bad. So Autobots, not Decepticons. But anyway, and these will do things like massage the data on it when it's on its way over. So for example, if you had a series of comma separated values and you want those to be a full, you know, array of values, you can run explode on them. It knows how to validate that something is a valid machine name. Various other process plugins. When I share the deck around, each of these links off to a page in the Drupal.org handbook that describes each of these in detail. But basically, this is the process. Move from a source to a destination, processing along the way, and each one of these things is pluggable and very flexible, so that you can either, you know, Contrib modules can add their own stuff to this, or you can do your own custom stuff as well. And these files are all written in YAML files to kind of set up the framework, and then PHP to do the actual work. When it comes time to execute migrations, you have essentially two options there. One is that Drupal migrate UI, as I mentioned. So this is uses a module-based system. So it kind of looks at all of your modules in your system. It explains which ones will not be upgraded because they don't have a corresponding destination, and which ones will. And then you also have the option, and this is what most people do choose, of using command line tools for this, which is Drush. And there's 3 modules kind of involved in that. Migrate tools get you the actual Drush commands. Migrate upgrade will generate the migrations for you for moving from 6 to 8 or 6 to 9. And then migrate plus is kind of this awesome grab bag of additional functionality, which includes, you know, extra sources, extra destinations. It's got examples code in there. It's got extra, you know, Drush awesomeness. So the 3 of those together really make for a powerful tool. And the Drush commands are also more flexible than the UI is currently. So for example, you can roll back, not just import your migrations. And you can kind of import incrementally instead of doing the whole thing in one go. You also need to make sure there's a destination to migrate to, or else it's going to, you know, you're going to leave data behind in your old Drupal 7 state. So there's a module in Contrib called upgrade status, not to be confused with update status, which ships in core. And that is something you install on your Drupal 7 site. And what it will do is it will basically scan all of your existing modules and then see if it can find a corresponding Drupal 8 version of that module. And if there's an existing Drupal 8 version, there's often an existing Drupal 9 version as well. This is also the same tool that you use to move from 8 to 9. It's just a little bit different, the Drupal 7 version, because it's much more oriented around, does this project exist or not, rather than oriented around, is this using deprecated code or not. And then for your custom modules, there's a tool called the Drupal 7 to 8 Drupal module upgrader. And this is a series of Drush commands, and it's kind of cool. It basically scans through your code where it finds old stuff. It links you to change record on Drupal.org, so you can read more about why, you know, for example, you don't use hook block info anymore, and now we use something else. And then in a lot of cases, it has the opportunity to automatically do a basic level conversion of that code for you. And so this will not be like a quick run a script and, oh, you're on Drupal 9, but it does get you quite far into the process so that you don't have to start completely from scratch trying to understand how to port one module to the other. When we were building this thing, we used the diff module as our kind of test base. And diff is nice, diff is nice because it has, you know, forms that it has admin pages, you know, it accomplishes, you know, different goals. It has menus it exposes. So I think it might even have blocks and stuff like that. So anyway, it does a whole bunch of kind of the basic things to get you started. And then another thing that people like to do when they're on their way into Drupal 9 is, I've got this content, maybe this content is from even before Drupal 7. Maybe I've been, moving it along since 1995 or something. So let's make sure our content is cleaned up. And there's a really great tool out there that I don't think a lot of people know about called Migrate QA. And Migrate QA is by Phase 2, and it's essentially, how everybody has like those spreadsheets, massive spreadsheets that you spread around, and it has like all the columns and whether or not you've checked whether or not this content is up to date or it's missing a screenshot or whatever. It's basically that, but dynamic and built into Drupal itself, so that you can flag content as, needing approval, or you can, add different customizable flags to things. You can create reports of different types of content and this kind of thing. And it's really sweet. There was a presentation on it at DrupalCon Seattle last year. I encourage you to check out. So before I get into all of that stuff, let's talk about let's see what's happening in chat. So, are there other tools that people have encountered in their migrations that they want others to know about? Yes, I will provide the slides after. I'm not sure what the process is for that. I'll either tweet them out at @webchick or put them on the DrupalCon website, whatever the sanctioned way to do it is. Feeds. Yeah, feeds is a great little module. I know there's a feeds migrate. I don't know what the status of that is right now. Sorry, I don't usually use Chrome, so all my stuff is not autofilling like I expect it to be. Feeds is sort of a UI for bringing over things from a source to a destination. And then there's a feeds migrate module that last I looked at it, didn't quite have a UI. Yeah, it's still in development. But definitely a really cool project to keep an eye on, because when we talked about how the migrate system is structured in that source destination process way, this provides a UI for doing some of that kind of stuff. So good point. If migrate can import from CSV, why would you need the feeds migrate? That's a good question. Because feeds migrate is attempting to give the site builder control over the migration versus the Drupal migration system. Right now, anyway, you currently have to be kind of a developer to do that. You have to run drush commands. You have to create YAML files, PHP files, that kind of thing. And so yeah, this is particularly challenging for people who might have learned PHP via Drupal in older versions of Drupal. Coming up to speed on Drupal 8's, object-oriented paradigms and stuff like that is sometimes challenging. And, kind of looking at the vast scope of what the migrate system can do, it's very, very powerful, but it can also be intimidating for people, at least out of the gate. Do you think migration attempt is worth for very complicated D7 projects with 30 plus custom modules and 150 contrib modules? Yeah, I mean, depending on what those are, I feel, let's have some real talk for a second here. If you're currently on Drupal 7, one way or the other, you're going to have to move off of Drupal 7. Right now, you don't have to do that until November of 2022. That used to be November 2021, but it got extended because of COVID, and we were like, crap, people are really struggling, and let's be kind and give them an extra year on their end of life. And so that was done a few weeks ago. But and then if that's not even late enough for you, there's extended vendor support that takes it all the way to 2025. So you've got a long runway on your Drupal 7 site. But at some point, you're going to have to move off it because it will no longer be security supported, or because you don't want to pay a vendor to security support it for you. And at that point, you have a couple of options. You can either move to something like WordPress or Adobe Experience Manager, whatever fits the bill, and kind of do a whole replatforming situation. Or you can stay on Drupal and go through that sort of big migration from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 or 9 one time, and then from then be on the little mini updates that take half a day or something to actually accomplish. Either way, you have to incur the cost of analyzing all of your data, figuring out what functionality you have and how to replicate it in the new system. But if you stay with Drupal, then all of the knowledge that you have about Drupal architecture, the site building concepts, views, structured content, web forms, you name it, all the contrib stuff that you're used to, you get to keep using that knowledge and it doesn't all go away. And you don't have to rewrite all of the things that you've learned, retrain all of your people on it. So for me, and I'm obviously biased, but for me, it seems like the best idea is to stay with Drupal if you can, because once you've incurred the cost of replatforming, whether it's to WordPress or whether it's to Drupal 9, Drupal 9 keeps you on that easy upgrade path then for the rest of the time, versus if you're moving to Adobe, say, every time they come up with a new major version, you have to do a replatform again. And so, you know, it's about where you want to sink your costs, I think. All right, I'm going to get into, this is the sponsored part of the thing, but it is relevant because, you know, I see some people in there that are saying a lot of things that our customers are saying as well, which is, you know, this is cool, but man, this sounds like a lot of work. And I have to become a developer, and I have to know all of these things about my underlying data schemas, and I have to write process plugins, and like, I'm very intimidated by this process. Is there anything that's going to make this easier? So yes, Acquia has been kind of focused on this problem for the past, well, probably about 9 months or so, maybe a year. And what we're aiming to do is create a product, which is coming out later in 2020. It's currently in a private beta. That's going to migrate Drupal 7 to 9 applications up to 50% faster, we're saying. And I want to point out, technically, 0 is up to 50% faster. I'm just kidding. But anyway, the benefits of this is we saw that people were getting intimidated by the developer knowledge required to use Drupal's Migrate API, to the point that they would even like write their own, you know, custom SQL scripts or whatever in order to avoid learning it. So we're trying really hard to center the site builder in this product. So we're creating a UI that essentially does everything that, you know, Drush can do, but also has a lot of built-in smarts for things like dependency management, knowing the best way of doing something and codifying that in an opinionated way. And the idea being there to lower the barrier of entry for doing content migration, so you don't need to come up this big learning cliff. We give you an Acquia provided migration workspace, and then we build in a bunch of best practices in the product itself. And I want to be clear about what this does. It does not one-click button move you to Drupal 9 and birds are chirping and unicorns are farting rainbows and everything. But what it is going to do is cut the cost of all of these different areas significantly, so that hopefully when it comes time to move from Drupal 7 to 9, you are not, you know, just staring down something that looks very intimidating. It's hard to do. But I want to emphasize, it's only going to help with part of the overall migration. You will still need a developer for any tricky custom code, as well as your presentation code, although we do integrate with Acquia Site Studio, which is kind of a low code design focus situation if you want a kind of a point and click way to get your theme back. So there's 4 components: an additional Acquia cloud environment, module recommendation engine, enhanced migration capabilities, and a UI. It's a React UI, so it's all swooshy whooshy. And then optional, if you want it, you can integrate with Site Studio to, you know, kind of speed up the theme process. So you'll have a new environment in your Acquia Cloud environment, or Acquia Cloud application. It's a special environment that won't let you drag and drop code to it. The only thing it's for is for migrating. And it has a couple of features, for example, a refresh button that you can use to automatically pull all of the, like a fresh copy of your database from your production environment. And then when you click on it, it's creating a Drupal 9 website for you that's automatically composerified, and also goes against a module recommendations engine. And this is where our team, the Drupal acceleration team, has kind of run down, you know, the rabbit hole with as many contrib modules as we can to figure out, hey, if you're using paragraphs, you need to move to this. Here's some patches that are required to make it work. And then we mark a migration path we've had the opportunity to kind of, you know, do that with as vetted is true, so that you know that you're getting the most up-to-date, you know, and complete migration possible. I can attempt to do a live demo here. These are always fun. Any questions so far on what we're trying to do here, what it is and what it isn't? Looks like we have technical problems with Hopin at the moment. Is there something that can help with transitioning PHP templates to Twig? There is something called Twigify, I want to say was the name of it. Yep. It was not touched recently ago, so I don't know that I would trust that. But theoretically, anyway, yeah, I mean, this is just code like any other code, and the ability to, scan it and modify it in place should be possible. Drupal module upgrader doesn't deal with that. Drupal module upgrader, we really focused on the module piece of that, only because the library we were using is a PHP parsing library. It's actually cool. It kind of parses it like jQuery more or less, and you can say this function, arrow, this property, blah blah. But we couldn't find a similar library like that for HTML parsing, probably because parsing HTML is a nightmare, and nobody would want to write a library to do it because it's horrible and sad. Is it going to be open? Oh, the thing I'm talking about is going to be open source or specific to the Acquia hosting platform. At the moment, specific to Acquia hosting, because we got to walk before we can run, and we want to make sure that it's working really well, and that's the environment that we control. However, all of the changes that we have to make to the migration system and to these contrib modules and to core and everything else to make the product work well, that's all making their way up into upstream patches. So through the making of this product, we're also in turn making migrations better for everyone. And I pulled stats, and it's something like 200 or something migration issues our team has managed to work on over the past 3 quarters. I think we've managed to help fix about 50 bugs or something like that. And so we're trying to make this so it's a beneficial thing for Acquia customers, but also a beneficial thing for the community. All right, let's see if I can not screw up a live demo. This should be fun. All right, so I have this website called Acquia Training. Because it turns out at Acquia, we have Drupal 7 sites too that we haven't moved yet. So, so this site has, a few different things in it. It has, let me go to my content types. It has company profiles, courses, events, page, and so on. It has a few different views. You've got a list of study guides. You got a list of free trainings, all this kind of stuff. So it's a pretty basic site. It's like a brochureware site, but there are some tricky bits in there. Like, for example, if you look at, training courses and some of these events, there's quite a few fields here like date, cost, delivery, event details, and so on. So we thought it would be a good thing to throw this tool at and see if it could do anything or not. So I'm going to pop into the tool. This is the welcome page that you get when it's first installed. And it gives you here's the things that you need to do. So what we work off of is a copy of your Drupal 7 database and files so that we can reference them throughout the migration process. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But for now, I'm just going to log in with my extremely secure password. No, I do not. And then the first step of the process is to choose which data to import. So once again, this is reading from the Drupal 7 copy of your database, and we put all this stuff in site builder terminology. So you can see it's called things like Acquia certifications, taxonomy terms, user accounts. It's not called like d7_user.blah_blah_blah.yaml. We thought that was really important for people to feel familiarity with their new Drupal 9 site, and it looks a lot like their old Drupal 7 site. That was the goal. It automatically knows to skip anything with 0 pieces of content. So you can see that this site was not using private files, so it's just going to skip it automatically. I could also choose to skip anything else, but one thing I can't skip is anything like filter format configuration that other migrations rely on. So there's deep knowledge of what migration dependencies exist, so that you can't, for example, import article comments without first importing articles, without first importing tags, and so on. So I'm going to go ahead and start this, just leave the defaults here. And this will take me to the migrations dashboard. So initially, this doesn't import, and what this is doing is it's automatically creating in Drupal 9 the various containers for moving my content over. So it's creating content types, vocabularies, filter formats, all this kind of stuff, so that when we start looking at some of the actual content in the system, like web forms or events or this kind of thing, we can be sure that there's something to actually move those things into. There's an overall progress meter here to keep you posted on how you're doing. There's also a tracker number of errors. And then as things get moved over, they automatically get stuck into these workflow situations. Like needs review means it imported, but there were some problems. And completed means it imported and there were no problems. So good for you. if I wanted to import these Acquia certifications taxonomy terms, you can see that I can't. This is grayed out, and that's because I have unmet dependencies, which is that this needs public files in order to continue. So let's import public files. So I'm going to click that. So that instantly queues it up. You can see our progress meter, which I like to call the swooshy whooshy, starts moving, and you can see the progress counts up. Once it's completed, it moves out either to needs review if there were problems, which there were in this case, or completed, depending on the situation. So I'm going to click on needs review, and let's take a look at these messages that are coming up. So let's take a look here. So this is the messages console. This is to help you debug any problems that are happening in your migrations. And I know none of your migrations are going to have problems, but just as a general rule, when people migrate, there are problems. So what this is telling you is this is the message that came back from Drupal. A lot of these are very funny little messages that are really fun to parse out and read. But the nice thing is that these are surfaced in a UI for you, because currently you have to basically read an SQL table in order to get access to these. And then we provide, where possible, a user-friendly solution column to these. So what this is telling you is that this file is owned by a user that no longer exists. This is wrong in your Drupal 7 site too, so please fix it there, and then refresh the source database and roll back and import this migration. And this is really nice because it's tracking entity validation errors. And what that means is these are data integrity problems you have on your existing Drupal 7 site that when you bring them over into Drupal 9 are going to cause you problems. So this will surface those for you so you can see, aha, let me fix that on my Drupal 7 site. And then once I've done that, I can come back to needs review and I can say, okay, let's take public files, roll back and import, and try it again and see what happens. The other thing I want to point out that we've done here, again, really focusing on that site builder persona, is the concept of preview. So you can see now I don't have any unmet dependencies for my taxonomy terms. So I can click in here and I can see, and mind you, nothing has been imported yet. So I have imported 0 of my taxonomy terms, but it will give you kind of a mocked up preview of what this is going to look like. So you can see that the source values originally were this, the destination values are going to be this, and then we even offer a content preview, and I can just page through a couple of these so you can see. And it will show you a rendered preview of what that's going to look like. And that's really helpful for example, image paths. It might say, file, blah, 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 and that sounds good, but might be a broken image in the end. It also helps with like dates. If something's suddenly showing up as, January 1st of 1970, there was some kind of a problem with the mapping. And my favorite thing is that you can actually browse by the original URL on the source site. So let me go to taxonomy here for a second. And was it Acquia certifications? I think it was. Well, let's just pick, I don't know, Site Factory Pro. Why not? If I copy and paste this, whoops, I'm sorry, this URL from my Drupal 7 site into here, it'll automatically pull that up so I can preview that. So that's really helpful if you have, for example, 700 billion articles, but you really care about the CEO's fancy welcome message one and making sure that the formatting came over okay in that. So, pretty cool. So I'm like, okay, that looks great. Let's just import a bunch of these and just let it fly and see what happens. And so you can see that it, counts them up as it's completing, takes them out. If it highlights in green, it's moving to completed. If it highlights in yellow, it's moving to needs review, and kind of going forth like that. This, if I let it import everything, because there's thousands of records here, there's like something like 27,000 records. It'll take about 15 minutes, which I don't want to take up that amount of time because I want to leave time for Q&A. So here's a finished one that I did run through all of them on. And you can see as we start clicking around here, I have content. And here's all my stuff from my Drupal 7 site. Here's an event, for example, that you can check out. You can see that the front end of my site has, my study guides link that's linking to my list of study guides and so on. So yeah, pretty cool. You can get pretty far in a short amount of time. We're really focusing again on that site builder use case and trying to give people early wins possible because it can be scary, and we want people to feel successful, and we want people to end up on Drupal 9 and love it. So that's my spiel. Questions on that? The Wayne's World reference. I'm so glad someone in this audience is old enough to know what that is. So that makes me very happy. All right. So that's a live demo. If you want to learn more, there's this page on acquia.com. I can paste the link in chat as well. If you're curious, there's a form there that they'll use to again. And when can you try it? I'm trying to be very careful to not give exact dates. If you're an Acquia customer, you can talk to your AM or your TAM, account manager, or technical account manager, and they can talk to me and we can get you hooked up if you meet the criteria for beta. If you don't, then I'm hoping that we can release this very early on in Q4. That's the idea, because we want to get people up to speed on getting these migrations going. But if you participate in the beta, the nice thing there is we're going to work on your module problems first, and you get some say in how we prioritize features that this thing doesn't do. Because people in the audience will be quick to note that, okay, well, this does the content migration, but there's all kinds of other things that come into a migration. And, for example, one hot feature request is the ability to futz with the data model as it's coming in. So for example, I don't want, to have field taxonomy 1 move to Drupal 9. I want to call it, board game category or something like that. So we're working on, in the future roadmap, features like that allow you to munge your data so that you're not stuck with decisions that you made back in the Drupal 7 days. And then, yeah, once again, what you get out of this, if you're not an Acquia customer, upstream contributions galore, because anytime we find a bug in a module or a core migration path or something, we are filing a patch for it, and we're adding the patch to our Composer JSON, but you can just as easily add patches to your Composer JSON as well. So once again, the whole goal of this thing, everybody wins. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Enough with the sales pitch already. Bring it back home. Yes, ma'am, which is past me scolding myself. Anyway, the summary. Drupal 9, lots and lots and lots of new features, lots of future innovation. It's so exciting to finally have a version of Drupal that the core developers and the users are on at the same time. I can't tell you how awesome that is, because that is not how it usually goes. Among these features is a really powerful migration system. It's extremely flexible. You can move from anything to Drupal. You can move from anything to something else. You can transform it in all kinds of fun and unholy ways. There are tons of things you can do right now to make your Drupal 7 site easier to migrate. You can do some house cleaning. You can do some content auditing. You can install that upgrade status module to get a picture of what your migration path is going to look like in terms of your modules. I want to be clear, if you want, you can go from 7 to 9 directly. You don't have to go to 8 first. You can if you want. There are more modules available on Drupal 8 right now anyway, so you might have a bit easier time. But I just want to point that out, that depending on where you are in your planning process, that's an option for you. There are tons and tons and tons of modules, tutorials, etc. that are available to help. And if you need extra help, there's a product for that. So either way, no matter which way you go, I really hope to see you on Drupal 9 soon. And now we'll go one more time to the chat, see if we have some questions. Do we have to be an Acquia customer to use Acquia Migrate? Currently, yes. Once we get the product launched and we get, all kinds of, marketing and sales, blue from it, that is one thing I'm hoping we can do, is just open source the entire thing. Currently, what is open sourced are any upstream contributions, any bugs, patches we need to file to fix problems in core and contrib, as well as the backend module itself. That is also going to be GPL v2. But the React UI that I was showing you, as well as the module recommendation engine, those are going to be proprietary, at least for now. Cool. How long does a migration take? That is such a fun question. And the answer is it depends. So when we are trying to figure out how long a migration takes, one important factor that we lump into that is how much of your overall code base is covered in Drupal 9. So a big thing that goes into factoring that calculation is how many contrib modules do you have versus how many custom modules you have. One thing that people new to Drupal can get themselves in a lot of trouble with, especially if they're like PHP developers, is they think Drupal's a framework and they see it has APIs and like, oh, wonderful, I can just start writing code and making use of these wonderful APIs. And then they get into trouble because if they had used, for example, panels or whatever contrib solution was available at the time, they could have just checked a checkbox to get that functionality instead of writing 25,000 lines of code. And now that 25,000 lines of code needs to be converted from the old procedural functions to the new object-oriented way. So that would be my first question, is how many contrib versus custom modules do you have? Hopefully the ratio is like lots of contrib, a little bit of custom. Almost always your theme is going to be custom, and that's understandable. The second thing that I'd look at is like, how complex of a data model are you using? So for example, are you, do you have like tons and tons and tons of content types? Are they using all kinds of esoteric fields, like a geo field with a Postgres, geolocation, blah, blah. Those things are going to be harder to move over than things that, like, say, the top 200 modules that the community is using, because most of those are getting a lot of really good attention. So if I want to actually pull up this page, I'm going to have to do this from memory because, again, Chrome, not my usual browser. But where is it? Yeah, this. So this is a dashboard. I can paste a link to that in chat as well. Chat. This is a dashboard showing all of the modules porting process to Drupal 9. So as you can see, that's the only part that's explicitly Drupal 9 compatible, which is a third of the modules, which is pretty impressive, actually. Anybody who was around when Drupal 8 first came out knows that the initial modules that were ready for Drupal 8 were like maybe that at best. I don't even think it was that much. It was not much. So this is pretty much 30% of the modules. An additional 30% need one line change to one file, and then they're ready to go. And there are patches already in the queue ready for them to go. So, check your contributed modules against this list. You can search, if you have like the bibliography module. Let's see if I can spell bibliography on a Tuesday afternoon. Nope, apparently I can't. But anyway, if you have a Drupal 8 module, let's use, not views, that's in core now. Web form, sure. Not web from, that's a different thing. Okay, wow, okay. Well, the search is not working right now. That's cool. I love finding, I love that the live demo of my thing that could have broken in a million ways went okay, but then this is not working. But anyway, so web form, I can just show you, is like, I don't know, somewhere on this list. Here we go. So you can say, yep, it's explicitly Drupal 9 compatible. There's any notes left by the maintainer about what's required to do that. So going through and auditing your modules that way is a good first step to see how it goes. And then it also depends on, like, how much cleanup you want to do. If you're doing just kind of a lift and shift, just like, get it in a Drupal 9 and we'll sort it out later. Or if you're trying to couple this with, like, say, a big redesign, which a lot of people do, because they want to update the design system that they were using back in 2011 and use the latest stuff, pattern-based web component, blah, blah, blah. They'll often couple it with that. And then that also adds more time and effort to the migration, but then the result that you get at the end will be a lot more appealing to marketing and other people who have to use the website. Because a lot of people don't want to just pay, especially right now, for an IT upgrade. They want it coupled with some nice, benefits and stuff like that. So. Oh, on the pie chart, I noticed rector. What is that? Yeah, it sounds like a horrible procedure you get at the doctor, but no. Rector is a library for automatically converting PHP code to new PHP code. Very similar to what Drupal Module Upgrader does, actually, but it's only for the latest object-oriented PHP, because that's much easier to move from one thing to another than the kind of horrible things we had to do. So what it is it's an automatic code refactorer thing for PHP, which you can see here. And it's a general purpose library, so you can see we're on that list, but Symfony uses it, Cake PHP, lots of different people. A big move in the Drupal 8 space in general is just kind of jumping on the let's find the best tool for the job and use it, instead of us writing all our own stuff from scratch. And so that's yet another manifestation of that. Organic groups, I don't know off the top of my head, and yes, that is my cat behind me. Sorry about that. If anyone knows how to muzzle a cat, I'm just kidding. No, it's fine. She's just very excited. She gets very excited about Drupal. She's been involved in Drupal for almost as long as I have, really. So it's fine. For organic groups, I don't know off the top of my head. That is not one we've managed to dig into very much, but I do know that there is a project called Group. Typing. Sorry. that a lot of people are using in Drupal 8 anyway to do the same types of things that organic groups module could do in the past. But I haven't personally used it. I can't really vouch for it. I would not be the best person to answer that right now, but maybe by the end of the year I can answer that for you because we'll have it built into our thing to do it for you automatically. That would be the hope. All right, I think I'm at time. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming and for asking such great questions. And I will copy and paste this chat and see if I can get more answers out somehow. But yeah, thank you so much. Have a great DrupalCon, and I think the Dries note is up next. So see you there.